You ever have one of those moments where you step out of a cab still wearing the same boots that carried you through a year's worth of sand and hell, halfway across the world, just dreaming of your old bed, and instead of your house, you're looking at a dog park? Yeah, that happened. 11 months gone. All I wanted was to surprise my mom, maybe crash on the same lumpy mattress I grew up on. But right where my porch swing used to creak in the breeze, I saw 3 golden retrievers fighting over a frisbee and some woman in yoga pants giving me the stink eye like I was the stray. For a second I thought maybe I had the address wrong, but then I spotted that old oak tree, the one I carved my name into, before deployment, still standing still mine. Except apparently none of it was mine anymore. There was a shiny sign staked right into my front yard. Big letters, Willow Ridge Community Park, sponsored by the Homeowners Association. A plaque underneath even had the gall to talk about peaceful living and communal joy. All I could do was stand there, dust still clinging to my uniform, while random neighbors sipped smoothies and shrugged when I asked what happened to the house. Government guy didn't pay his taxes, one of them mumbled, walking off like I was invisible. They didn't know the so-called government guy was standing right there. I wish I could say I exploded or broke down, but the truth is, I just felt hollow. The kind of tired that crawls into your bones after you've dodged bullets, pulled friends out of burning vehicles, and then come home to fight a different kind of enemy, one that wears designer sunglasses and hosts HOA potlucks. But you know what really stung? The records at City Hall said I lost my house for tax delinquency 6 months back, even though I'd filed my military exemption the day I shipped out. The city clerk told me to take it up with the HOA. That's when I heard her name for the first time, Karen Mallister. Now, you ever meet someone and just know? They were born for HOA drama. Karen was holding court at the clubhouse, surrounded by framed certificates and a blown-up portrait of herself that said, Founding Mother. I caught her mid-scold, ripping into some poor kid for hanging fairy lights. When I introduced myself, told her I was the original owner of 1428 Maple Trail, she gave me this look like I'd just tracked mud on her white carpet. She barely skimmed my file before telling me my property had gone unclaimed and delinquent and was transferred to the HOA just like that. I tried to explain about the military exemption, but she cut me off, said, Maybe you should have thought of that before joining the Army and abandoning your responsibilities. I swear you could almost hear her ego creaking. I reminded her about the federal law protecting deployed service members from exactly this kind of thing, and she offered me a nice lot behind the dumpsters, like she was doing me a favor. That night in some cheap motel, I just sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall, realizing that I might have left one battlefield, but I'd stepped right into another one. Dirtier, more personal, and run by folks who didn't even have the guts to call themselves enemies. Next morning, I called in a favor from Luis Ortega, a buddy who owed me from way back. He does cyber investigations for a federal agency now. In hours, he dug up more dirt than the bulldozers ever could. Fake signatures, board meeting notes written after the fact, land sales going through shell companies, most of them linked straight back to Karen's family. I got to read emails where the board joked about making Willow Ridge military-free and HOA pure. Karen even wrote that if I ever did come home, I'd probably just salute and walk away. Well, not today. I thought about taking her to court, but Karen had lawyers for days and the patience to drag this out for years. I wanted something quicker, louder, and with a touch of poetic justice. I remembered a conversation with Colonel Trent. He once told me if I ever needed anything stateside to just call. This wasn't just a property dispute anymore. It felt like betrayal by the people I swore to protect. I told him everything. He didn't blink, just asked for coordinates and a list of structures. You want this quiet or dramatic? He asked. You already know my answer. The next 3 weeks were a blur, blueprints, drone images, legal loopholes. Luis pieced together a case so thick you could knock someone out with it. We found that my house wasn't the only thing built on lies. Whole chunks of Willow Ridge sat on stolen or misused land. Wetlands bulldozed for new homes, sheds built over sewer lines, and a clubhouse that was technically half a foot into county property. We even found an email where Karen called soldiers unpredictable and undesirable homeowners. That one burned me up. I pinned it next to the last photo of my mom sitting on our porch swing before they sent it all to the dump. I met with Judge Winslow, a sharp-as-nails woman who'd done her time as a military JAG. She looked over the proof and told me straight, yeah, someone's going to jail if this hits the press. But in reality, the HOA had money influence and time. Legal justice might come eventually. But if I wanted real leverage, I had to get creative. I asked her if there was a legal way for federal authorities to take temporary control of the land. She almost laughed. Unless there was a national security angle, it'd never fly. But here's the thing. Sometimes the best plays are the ones nobody expects. Colonel Trent set up a training exercise called Operation Civic Shield Urban Readiness Training right there on my old lot and all the surrounding HOA land in dispute. The brass signed off, the DOD approved it, and suddenly Willow Ridge wasn't just a nice suburb. It was about to become a live military zone, all perfectly above board. Karen had no idea. She was probably drafting new rules about mailbox color when the convoy showed up at sunrise. Humvees rolled past Azalea's camouflage tents, went up where she liked to hold wine tastings, and soldiers started taking soil samples right in the middle of her communal joy. I watched the neighborhood wake up to a military exercise on their manicured lawns. Karen stormed out in a silk robe waving a coffee mug like it was a sword. She tried to lay into the officer in charge, but he just handed her a sealed packet Federal Investigation Land Review Temporary Military Occupation. Her face turned the color of a fire truck. She started shouting about rights and neighborhood sovereignty, but nobody listened. The soldiers were polite, efficient, and utterly unmoved by HOA theatrics. I got there just as she was going full meltdown, accusing me of orchestrating the invasion. I told her plain and simple that the land she stole was coming back to me piece by piece. She threatened to call the mayor. I told her the mayor had signed off, as had Judge Winslow. When she tried barricading herself in the clubhouse, the soldiers just unlocked the door with a county key and turned her crown molding and HOA pride room into a command center. Her wine fridge, now holding bottled water and MREs. It only got better. A young officer knocked on her door, took a few photos, and informed her that her living room would be used for field briefings since her house sat right in the middle of disputed land. You could see her world collapsing with every word. By noon, news vans had descended on Willow Ridge. Reporters crowded around the new federal training ground sign at the entrance. Karen tried to spin it as government overreach, but the cameras only wanted to know why a deployed veteran's house got bulldozed. Footage of her shouting at soldiers went viral. Hashtags exploded, and suddenly the whole country wanted to know what kind of place destroys a soldier's home while he's fighting overseas. Sympathy rolled in, fast donations, volunteers, neighbors coming by with coffee and apologies for not standing up sooner. Some of them even dug out old photos of my house to help me prove what stood before. Meanwhile, Luis kept finding more dirt, more homes with fraudulent titles, more shell companies tied to Karen's cousin. The IRS got involved. Indictments started flying. By sunset, the HOA empire was done. The woman who fined people for wind chimes now had soldiers sleeping in her garden. My land, the one I thought was lost, was being restored, surveyed, marked, and cleared for rebuilding. The next day, eviction notices went out for every house built on stolen ground, 11 in total, including Karen's. Some residents tried to protest, but most just looked relieved it was finally over. The board was disbanded, records seized, years of fraud uncovered in boxes buried in Karen's garage. Judge Winslow dissolved the HOA, and the entire subdivision voted to form a new association, one that actually looked out for its people, not just the rules. I got to hammer in the first nail on my new porch frame, right where my mom's swing would hang again. Volunteers showed up, some neighbors, some strangers, all there because they believed a soldier shouldn't come home to find his life bulldozed by bureaucracy. The media camped outside for days, but eventually the story moved on. Karen tried one last press conference, drowned out by neighbors chanting for justice and waving homemade signs. She left town in the dead of night, legacy in shambles, her empire reduced to lawsuits and internet memes. You know, I never thought the hardest battle would be the one fought with paperwork and petty tyrants. But justice isn't about how loud you shout. It's about how long you stand your ground, how quietly you fight back one signature, one nail at a time. And in the end, as the sun rose over a neighborhood finally free of fear, I realized sometimes the best revenge is simply coming home. Now, let me ask you, was it justice or just another fight between power and the people? Would you have done the same or let it go? Drop your thoughts below. Tell me what you think about right, wrong, and where you draw the line when it's your home on the line.